مشتاق لا تنمي هذه أنوار ذي سلمي عن قليل أنت في الحرم عند خير العرب والعجم
قف أمام القابر بالأدب.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الفاتحة بنية التعلم والتعليم والتذكر والتذكير والنفع والانتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على التماسك بكتاب الله وسنة رسوله والدعاء على الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى وعلى ما على نبينا سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى ما سلفنا صالحين وعلى ما المؤلف أبي أحمد بن زين الحبشي وعلى ما أشرف نحن أحمد اسمه الحبشي إن الله يدخل في نياتهم وأعمالنا في أعمالهم وأخلاقنا في أخلاقهم وطريقتنا في طريقتهم القبول. وإلى حضرة النبي سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم سر الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. رب اغفر لي ولوالدي وللمؤمنين آمين. Okay, so last week, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآل محمد. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. So last week we finished 3 of the 4 nullifiers of ablution, nullifiers of wudu. Okay, so just a quick recap of last week's. What we covered last week. Right, so the things that nullify ablution, first is the emission of anything from the 2 private parts, okay, whether the front or rear. Okay, I will be following the translation of Sheikh Abdulaziz Fredericks, right, in the book cover you can see there on the screen, right, as close as possible. Okay, but sometimes I diverge from his translation slightly, right, but generally we will be following the text, right, explaining the and breaking down the or unpacking the words, right, giving commentary on the words of the text, okay, according to other scholarly commentaries, inshallah, okay, for your reference. Right, so what we did last week, nullifiers of ablution. Okay, firstly is that the emission of anything from the 2 private parts, whether front or rear. So by emission we meant something that comes out from the inside, right, not by inserting something, right, hypothetically, even if it's a measuring tape or if it's a suppository or a hemorrhoid, okay, as long as if it's inserted, it's okay, but the minute it comes out, then one's wudu is broken. One has to renew one's wudu, okay, and of course it has to be with certainty. Okay, suspicion of something having come out is not enough. Not enough to override being certain about having been in a state of wudu. Okay, doubt, it does not override certainty. Okay, so if suspecting that something has come out is not sufficient, it has to be certain. Okay, emission of anything, meaning anything normal, urine, feces, wadi, madhi. Okay, wadi, madhi being both thick, clear, whitish, clear fluid. Okay, the definitions of these have been covered previously. Okay, so whether anything normal comes out, whether wet or dry, or even a stone or something abnormal, right, such as stones, blood. Okay, even a worm that pops its head out and then returns inside. Okay, so the minute it pops its head out, the wudu is nullified. Okay, but going in that does not nullify the wudu. Yeah, and from the 2 private parts, whether the front or the rear. Okay, of course we're talking about a living person. Okay, because if anything comes out from the private parts of a dead person, that does not nullify wudu, but it obligates that the impurity or filth must be washed. Right, it obligates on the person washing the body. Yeah, so we're talking about a living person, right? Hence the wudu being nullified. Right, and of course, this person, if wudu is to be nullified, then this person must have been in a state of wudu. So we're talking about a living person who is in a state of ablution. Okay, so when we talk about anything that comes up from the two private parts, front or rear, that means excluded by that definition from the two private parts. Excluded by that is by vomiting. So vomiting does not break one's wudu, right? Letting blood, nosebleed, etc. Okay, so that's the first of what we did last week, right? The emission of anything from the two private parts, whether front or rear, right? Of wind also, yeah, of course. Right, and of course, this I think last week I forgot to mention with regards to the emission of wind, right, from the private parts, even the frontal private parts for females, right? Sometimes you know, when wind passes through that is also considered to have broken one's ablution, to have broken one's wudu. Okay, according to the Shafi'i madhab. Okay, secondly, we covered the other thing that breaks one's wudu is if one loses one's intellect during sleep or otherwise. Okay, except for a certain kind of sleep with four conditions we discussed last week. Okay, so in sleep, generally in sleep, the difference between sleep, we distinguish between sleep and drowsiness. Okay, so sleep is that when somebody calls you, you're not able to listen, to hear, right? Or you're not able to hear conversation going on or speech being directed at you, right? Okay, or you are in a deeper state, you are actually dreaming. That's sleep. Right, drowsiness is you are able to hear, but you're not able to comprehend or understand what's being said. Okay, so you're in a semi, you know, in a barzakh, in a sort of semi state between consciousness and sleep. So there's a difference between sleep and drowsiness, which we covered last week. Okay, or otherwise, when he says otherwise, right, during sleep or otherwise, those words refer to losing one's intellect, right, not during sleep. For example, in the sense in the fit of insanity, right, or some sort of falling unconscious, right, or fits or drunkenness. Okay, so these also nullify one's wudu. Okay, so the only kind of sleep that does not nullify wudu is the sleep, right, where one's posterior is firmly fixed on the ground. Okay, as per the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, the companions used to do this, waiting for Isha, the Isha prayer between Maghrib and Isha. Sometimes some of them would fall asleep, and then they would get right up and pray the Isha prayer without taking ablution. Okay, meaning the ablution was not broken because they were sleeping, but with these four conditions. Okay, in a sleep that met these four conditions, which is that one's posterior is firmly on the ground, right, or on the seat, i.e. one is firmly fixed. Yeah, one is not too fat or too thin. Yeah, a normal body constitution, because otherwise one might not feel the wind passing out of the private parts. Yeah, or one might have a tendency, if one is not of normal constitution, maybe one side is heavier than the other, then one might incline to the side, has a likelihood of inclining to the side, in which case one is then gone against the condition number one, right, that one's posterior is firmly on the ground, right? So without knowing, one might sway to the side, right? Okay, and thirdly is that one wakes in the same position as one fell asleep in. Okay, so this relates to number two. Yeah. So if one wakes up and finds that one is lying on one side or one's back, then that wudu is broken, the ablution is broken. And then finally, fourth, one is not informed by a just person, okay, that he passed away. Just being someone who does not commit major sins and does not persist in minor sins. And so that's number two. Number three, the third thing that nullifies one's wudu is the touching of the human private parts, right, whether the front or the rear. Okay, whether the front or the rear, touching of the human private parts, whether the front or rear, whether one's own or another's. Okay, whether intentionally or accidentally. Yeah, with the palm of the hand or the inside of the fingers. Yeah, even if there is if the private parts are the private parts belonging to one's own child or a dead person's private parts. Okay, so excluded by this, like we mentioned last week, is that private parts of animals don't count. So it has to be private part of a human being, okay, whether alive or dead, whether your child related to you or not. Yeah, whether mumayyiz, whether young or old. Yeah. Okay, so excluded by the definition of human private parts are obviously animal private parts. That does not nullify one's wudu. Okay, and with the palm of the hand and the inside of the finger. So this is very important. This illustration, so this is where it becomes important to to the practical element of fikir. It's important that you remember, right? When we say the palm of the hands and the insides of the fingers, right? You have to remember this example. So you put your hands together and you press slightly firmly, right? And the parts which cannot be seen when your hands are together like this, right? That's what we mean by the palm of the hand and the insides of the fingers. Yeah. So with regards to hands, like this; with regards to fingers, like this; and with regards to thumbs, like this. Right? When the thumbs come together like that, right? Okay. So that's important to. It would be a good idea for you to try it by yourself, so that it helps to tie it down, right, to the memory. Okay, to try putting your hands together like this and like this. Okay, so it's a good tactile aid, you know, and for memorization. Okay, so human private parts refer to the penis, the body and the head of the penis, not the pubic hair, not the scrotum, not what's in between the frontal and front and rear private parts. Okay, the vagina refers to refers to the clitoral hood and the meeting of the two lips, the labia minora. Okay, not the sides, right? So in the event that one wants to adjust one's underwear and accidentally, you know, or intentionally even, it does not nullify the wudu. Okay, and it does not refer to what is above that. Above that, the pubic region, right, between the thighs, between the frontal and rear private parts, orifices. Okay, touching the bum, touching one's own bum or somebody else's bum, whether I mean, if it's in the same gender, right, or the breasts, yeah, also does not nullify one's wudu. Looking at one's awrat, looking at somebody else's private part also does not nullify wudu. Okay, so these are not things that are not included in the definition, or they're excluded by the definition given in the text. Okay, so it's important to stick with the definition in the text, and it's important to realize or to take note of what is excluded from the definition, so that there's no confusion. Because some people still, you know, even after many years, some people still think that when you rather that vomiting, yeah, breaks one's wudu. That's not the case. That it does break one's fast, yeah, but it does not break one's wudu. So maybe there's some confusion between the two. Okay, so it has to be clear. Okay, so those are the three that we covered last week. So this week, inshallah, we will move on to the final one, right? قال رضي الله عنه نفعنا الله به وبعلومه وبعلوم شيخنا في الدين في الدارين آمين. وينقض الوضوء التقاء بشرتي رجل وامرأة كبيرين أجنبيين بلا حائل إلا ظفرا أو شعرا أو سنا فلا ينقض الوضوء. Okay, so the fourth thing that nullifies or breaks one's wudu and means one is obliged to take wudu again if one wants to pray or do worship of that level. Yeah. The touching of the skin between male and female adults, okay, who are unrelated, i.e. not haram, yeah, or ajnabi, right, and without any barrier. So this nullifies one's wudu. Touching the nails, the hair or the teeth, right, does not nullify one's ablution, does not nullify one's wudu. Okay. The textual basis of this is in the Quran, Surah An-Nisa. Okay, Allah Subhanahu wa Taala says, "Awala mastumun nisa," or you have touched women, and that applies for both ways, yeah, men touching women, women touching men, male and female. Okay, so touching of the skin between male and female. Okay, so the touching of the skin means precisely that, the skin. Yeah, what is excluded by the definition, the reference to the skin, right? Meaning, if there is something that that touches that is other than skin, right? I.e., for example, a barrier, whether it's a cloth or a glove, etc., right? And whether it's thin, even if it's thin, even if it's wet, even if it's translucent. Okay, as long as there is a barrier, meaning skin does not touch skin, and then that does not nullify the wudu. Yeah. So it specifically involves the touching of the skin between a male and a female adult. Okay, so it has to be the skin that is touching, okay, that comes into contact with each other, not touching nails, hair, teeth, eyeballs, okay, because these do not cause arousal. Normally, these do not cause arousal, right? But it includes touching the gums and the tongue are included, okay, in the definition of skin. One's gums and tongue are included in the definition of skin, but not eyeballs, hair, teeth, nails. Okay. Okay, it's touching of the skin, and it's the touching of the skin between a male and a female. Okay, so excluded by this is members of the same sex. So, like as I mentioned earlier in the previous point, yeah, touching someone else's another person of the same sex's bum or back or anything, okay, does not, except for the private parts, does not nullify wudu. Okay, except for the private parts. Okay, so as covered earlier, not between the same sex, it does not nullify wudu except for the private parts. And if with regards to private parts, it nullifies wudu. It nullifies the wudu of the toucher and not that of the touched. Okay, I'm not sure whether I mentioned that earlier. Okay, so it nullifies the wudu of the one doing the touching. So, for example, if a man were to come up to another man and place his penis in the other man's hand, right, then the other man, the touched, right, the man who is holding the penis his wudu would be nullified, but not the man who is not the toucher, okay, not the one whose private parts is being held. Okay, so that should be a vivid enough example, right, to clarify, to elucidate the point, okay, to make the point. Okay, so it has to be touching of the skin, right, including the gums and the tongue, okay, which are included in the definition of skin, and not other than that. It has to be between a male and a female. So, of members of the same sex, touching of the skin does not nullify wudu except for touching of the private parts. And when the private parts, the touching is that of the private parts, and the one who is doing the touching, his wudu is nullified, not the one who is touched. Okay, and adults. Okay, so it must be between adults, meaning they have reached an age that usually evokes sexual interest. So this is an observation, a third party observation, for example. Okay, so the adult is the one who qualifies to be an object of normal or average desire. So, for example, they've reached an age where they are normally desirable. Okay, so if one with a normal or average sexual appetite looks upon him or her, looks upon this person, they might desire to take this person in marriage, right? Even if this person is has not yet reached puberty. Okay, although usually this is after puberty, usually. Okay, but desire varies, okay, from person to person. It's not something we can delimit in advance. Okay, so with regards to desire, what that is evoked, okay, the sexual interest that is evoked when observing a normally desirable member of the other sex, right. With regards to men, it involves the beginnings of an erection in men, okay, which the initial levels of desire sometimes involve the secretion or the emission of madhi, okay, and the climax of which, the culmination of which is mani, okay, semen, ejaculate, right. And in women, desire is signaled by a fluttering of the heart. Yeah. Okay. So as I mentioned, it varies between people, right? But when we say adults, we are referring to people, maybe a safe age for females will be above 9, maybe around 9, maybe even for male and female, right? Normally maybe up to 15, yeah, 15 and above, right? But I personally, I would not touch the skin or give my hand to in a shake, or to be. Sometimes we give our hands to the young children are taught to kiss the hands of the elders, right? So if the child is upwards of 9, maybe it might be a better idea not, to just to start weaning or to start making the child conscious, with regards to children. That some people maybe would prefer not to shake hands, or not to touch. Of course, this is done usually out of respect, right? So it also, when teaching this, it also has to be done tactfully, right, with the correct explanation to the child, and so that other people are not offended. Okay. So the child who is too young to be desired, right, when touched, does not nullify one's ablution. Okay. So a child below 15, below 9, wherever that normal age which normally incites sexual interest. Okay. And if one of them has reached this age, if there are two people, for example, shaking hands, one of them has reached this age and the other has not, then the wudu is not nullified. Okay, for the one who is for the wudu is not nullified for either, in fact. Okay. Okay, of course, for the elderly, it is nullified. Okay, so when they have not reached that age, it is not nullified. But past that age, right, no matter how old, wudu is nullified. Okay, if there is a touching of the skin between male and female adults who are unrelated. Okay, which brings us to the next point, relations. Okay, when we say unrelated in the text, non-mahram are people who are not legally marriageable. Okay, so people who are those who are related are those who are legally permanently unmarriageable kin. Okay, it's impossible, it's illegal, right, in the Sharia to marry these people, right? And these relations obtained through either lineage or wet nursing or intermarriage. Okay, and there are 18 of these categories of people, which we will cover soon. Okay, so with regards the touching and the toucher, both are nullified. Okay, when they fulfill these conditions, there's the touching of the skin and between male and female, and that they are adults, or both are adults, right, and they are unrelated. Right? Then in this case, the touching is nullified. Okay, even if touching someone who is mentally handicapped, or unwilling, or forced, or accidentally, or someone with a paralyzed limb, touching that limb, or even someone with erectile dysfunction, okay, who is not able to express or to manifest the desire, okay, that still nullifies the wudu, nullifies one's ablution. Okay, so a bit more on the relations, okay, legally without any barrier. So that refers to I covered that in the first definition, touching of the skin. I put that in together with that. Okay, so these are the list of mahrams, right? The list of legally unmarriageable kin, permanently. Okay, we are not meaning these relatives, if we touch them, right, touching because they are legally unmarriageable kin, they do not fall under the definition of they are excluded by they are excluded by the definition of unrelated. Okay, which as we mentioned earlier, okay, wudu is nullified by the touching of the skin between male and female adults who are unrelated. Okay, so these are all relatives, right, what we're going to do now. These are all relatives, mahrams, who, when touching the skin of these people, wudu is not nullified. Okay, of course, in the event that one touches the private parts, as I mentioned earlier, whether male or female, right, wudu is nullified by for the wudu of the toucher is nullified, not of the touched. Okay, so with regards lineage rather, okay, the mother, okay, so for a man, for example, right? The mother and upwards, meaning the mother, the grandmother, the great grandmother, and so on. Okay, daughter and downwards in the lineage. Okay, i.e., daughter, the granddaughter, great granddaughter, and so forth. Right, the sister. Okay, whether of the same parents or of a single parent. Right, from a single parent. Right, from a mother, from a shared mother. The sister, whether they share the same parents or they share a mother or a father. Okay, so the sister then is a mahram, right? And if touching her, the skin does not nullify wudu. Okay, a paternal aunt, a maternal aunt, okay, meaning the father's sister or the mother's sister, paternal aunt, nieces, right, the children of the brother, right, or from the sister. Okay, so these people are all, for men, for any man, these people are all unmarriageable to him permanently. Okay, and if touching these people, they do not, it does not nullify his wudu. Okay, this mahram relationship also obtains through wet nursing. Okay, wet nursing, breastfeeding when young. Yeah, so it's exactly the same as the relationship of lineage. Okay, so basically, effectively, when a wet nurse feeds a child, that child then enters into the nasab of the lineage of the wet nurse and the husband. Okay, but when we say the husband, we refer to the husband who owns the milk, who owns the breast milk. Okay, technically that's how the scholars put it. The husband who owns the breast milk, meaning the husband who was the cause, right, for the milk to have come in the first place. Okay, so meaning the husband who first impregnated that woman, which then caused the milk to come. Yeah, so that's the husband that we're talking about. So the child enters into the nasab, into the lineage of that mother and her husband. Okay, that husband. Meaning, if, for example, the lady has a child with a man, right, and then after that, the lady has a child with the man A, and then divorces man A, okay, or they divorce, right, and then marries man B. Yeah, then after that, this lady takes on becomes a witness to another child. Yeah, so that child now has entered into the lineage, in terms of wet nursing, has entered into the lineage of that lady, the one who nurses him, and the man A, not man B. Okay, so I hope that's clear enough. Okay, in any case, with regards to wet nursing, the relations are the same as with the mother, as with the lineage. Sorry, wet nursing and lineage are have the same relationship. They enter into the same mahram relations. Okay, and finally, by intermarriage. Okay, so the mother-in-law, the stepdaughter, i.e., the wife's or the husband's, rather the wife's daughter. Okay, the daughter-in-law, and the father's wife. So if the father was to take a second wife, right, or to take a second wife, for example, then the father's wife would also be a mahram through intermarriage, and this remains even after if they divorce, right? That lady is still the mahram of the man. Okay, so with regards females, with regards women, then we just reverse these relations accordingly, right? So for the lineage, instead of mother, we're talking about father. Instead of daughter, we're talking about brother. Instead of sister, we're talking about stepsister. We're talking about brother, right? Okay, so brother, whether of the same parents, or sharing the same parents, or sharing a mother, or sharing a father, and so on. Yeah, so we just flip the gender, we just reverse the gender, and the relationship obtains is the same relationship. Okay, with regards to breastfeeding, there are conditions, right? With regards to wet nursing, okay, there are conditions. So, for example, first of all, the child has to be under 2 years old, right? For the mahram relationship to obtain, right? The child has to be under 2 years old. It has to be five separate full feedings. Okay, meaning the child should be suckling, and to the point that he or she stops. on their own, on her own accord. Yeah, not if the child is pulled away before stopping. That's not considered a full feeding. A full feeding is when the child finally stops and is full. Right? So even after that, even if the child is is burped or regurgitates some of the milk, that's okay. That still counts as a feeding. Okay, but if the child is pulled away, then that does not count as a full feeding. Yeah. So those are the two conditions for wet nursing to obtain a mahram relationship through wet nursing. So this used to be done. Well, anyway, those are the two relations. Okay, so that someone becomes a mahram through wet nursing. Okay, or the nursling comes into a mahram relationship with the breastfeeding mother and the wet nurse. Okay, so the only difference is that, with regards to wet nursing, the difference between wet nursing and lineage, right? The only difference is that the one who enters into a mahram relationship or enters into a lineage through wet nursing, right, does not inherit. Okay, and if he is a boy, he is not allowed to become the wali or the legal guardian to give away, for example, his sister in marriage. Yeah, so if he happens to be the eldest, right, and then after that the wet nurse, the mother, has other children, right, he is not allowed to give them away in marriage, assuming the father is not around or dead. Yeah. Okay, so these are the people who, what you see on the screen, are the people who, if you touch them, your wudu is not nullified, right? For males, right? And for females, we reverse it accordingly. Okay, so those are the 4 things that nullify one's wudu. And inshallah next week we'll talk a bit about, we'll get into what hadath is, ritual impurity, what it actually is, and what people who are in a state of hadath are forbidden to do, right? Whether minor, intermediate, or major ritual impurity. Okay, minor, intermediate, or major hadath. Right? And then after that we'll go into prayer, inshallah. Okay, wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam wa afu minkum wa rahmatullahi wa sayyidina Muhammad wa sallam. Al-Fatiha. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
يا ربنا اعترفنا بأننا اقترفنا وأننا أسرفنا على لظى أشرفنا فضلا وجودا منا لا باكتساب منا بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول بالمصطفى الرسول نحظى بكل سول.